Okay, good morning, students of IT 6201, CS 6206, and CS 6200 for Principles of Operating Systems and its Applications. So welcome to our virtual class. So right now, our topic is about server roles. So we have the module overview, the role-based deployment, deploying role-specific servers. So in your lesson 1, the role-based deployment, what is a server role, what are role services, what are features, and the overview of a server manager. So let us define first what is a server. So when we say a server, it is a computer connected to a network of other workstations called clients. So a client computer requests the information from the server over the network. So the server tends to have more storage, memory, and processing power than a normal workstation, of course. So a network server today, it's a powerful computer that provides various shared resources to workstations and other servers on a network. So the shared resources can include the disk space, hardware access, and email services. So these servers are usually built with more powerful components, of course, than individual workstations. So in computing, ang server, it is a piece of computer hardware or software or computer program that provides functionality for other programs or devices called clients. So typical servers are database servers, file servers, mail servers, print servers, web servers, and also game servers and application servers. So the server roles in Windows Server describes a server's primary functions. So ang server role, it is a set of software. Okay? It is a set of software programs that when they are installed and properly configured, a computer performs a specific function for multiple users or other computers within a network. So they are properly installed and configured. Roles function automatically. So the Windows Server roles, we have the Active Directory Certificate Services, Active Directory Domain Services, the Active Directory Federation Services, the Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, the Active Directory Rights Management Services, the Application Server, the DHCP server, the DNS server, fax server, file services, the Hyper-V, the Network Policy and Access Services, print and document services, remote desktop services, web server, the Windows deployment services, Windows Server update services. The Active Directory Certificate Services, or the ADCS. So it is a Microsoft product that performs public key infrastructure functionality, or the PKI, and also supports personalities and provides other security functionality in a Windows environment. So it creates, also approves, and also rejects the public key endorsements for inward tasks of an association. The Active Directory Certificate Services, it is a Windows server designed to issue digital certificates. So the certificates have proven to be more secure and easier to use than a passwords. So the Microsoft realized this and deployed ADCS to help the Microsoft environments take advantage of certificate benefits. Whereas the Active Directory Domain Services, which is the ADDS, it acts as the core directory service for an organization. So it also manages hierarchical relationships between network objects, users, systems, servers, applications, etc. So with the ADDS, the IT admins can manage users' domain identities and their access to Windows resources. As such, the ADDS is integral to organizational security, and it is the core source of truth for authentication and authorization. The Active Directory Lightweight Directory Services, it is a lightweight directory access protocol directory service that also provides flexible support for directory-enabled applications. So without the dependencies and domain-related restrictions of the Active Directory domain services. So the Active Directory Rights Management Services, it is a server software for information rights management shipped with Windows Server. So the ADRMS is the server role that provides you with management and development tools that work with industry security technologies. So including yung ating mga encryption, certificates, and authentication. So it helps the organizations create a reliable information protection solutions. So it is a Microsoft Windows security tool that provides persistent data protection by enforcing data access policies. So like for documents to be protected with the ADRMS. So the application, the document is associated with must be RMS aware. So the Active Directory Rights Management Services has server and client components. Whereas the application server, it is a modern form of a platform middleware. And then we have the DHCP server. It is a network server that automatically provides and assigns IP addresses, default gateways, and other network parameters to client devices. So it relies on the standard protocol known as the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So to respond to broadcast queries, of course, by the clients. So the DHCP server automatically assigns an IP address and other information to each host on the network so that they can communicate efficiently with other endpoints. Whereas the DNS, so the DNS stands for Domain Name System. So the internet system for converting alphabetic names into numeric IP addresses. So for example, when a web address, which is the URL, is typed into a browser, the DNS servers return the IP address of the web server associated with the name. So it converts web addresses into IP addresses. So without a DNS server, you won't be able to connect to any websites. If you're having issues with your default DNS server, you can change it. A fax server, it is a system installed in a local area network server and also allows computer users whose computers are attached to the LAN to send and receive fax messages. So a fax server, it is a physical or virtual server connected to a local area network, allows computer users to send and receive fax messages from any computer that's connected to the LAN. The file server provides a central location to store all of your files so that multiple users can easily work with the same documents, spreadsheets, and other data. So the centralized storage also allows a business to back up just one computer to be sure their data is safe. So the Hyper-V can also consolidate and run applications onto a fewer physical servers. Like virtualization enables quick provisioning and deployment, also enhances workload balance and enhances the availability due to being able to dynamically move virtual machines from one server to another. So the Hyper-V, it is a Microsoft technology that allows users to create virtual computer environments and run and manage multiple operating systems on a single physical server. But to completely understand what Hyper-V is, you need to first understand what is a virtualization. The Network Policy and Access Services, which is the NPAS, it is a component, of course, ng Windows Server. It replaces the Internet Authentication Service from Windows Server. And also, NPAS helps you to safeguard the health and security of a network. So the NPAS performs, of course, authentication, authorization, and accounting for wireless authenticating switch, and also remote access dial-up and virtual private network connections. The remote desktop services, also known as the terminal services in Windows Server. So it is one of the components of Microsoft Windows that allow a user to take control of remote computer or virtual machine over a network connection. So the remote desktop services, it is an umbrella term for features of Microsoft Windows Server that allows users to remotely access graphical desktops and Windows applications. Whereas the web server, or the IIS, so the IIS stands for Internet Information Services. So the IIS, it is a flexible general purpose web server from Microsoft that runs on Windows systems to serve requested HTML pages or files. So an IIS web server accepts requests from remote client computers and returns the appropriate response. So most commonly, IIS is used to host the ASP.NET web applications and static websites. It can also be used as an FTP server and be extended to host web applications built on other platforms such as PHP. The Windows Deployment Services, it is a server technology from Microsoft for network-based installation of Windows operating systems. So the WDS, it is a server role that gives administrators the ability to deploy Windows operating systems remotely. So it can be used for network-based installations to set up new computers. So the administrators do not have to directly install each operating system. So the WDS, it is a server role that you can deploy on computers running Windows Server. So it enables you to deploy operating systems, including the Windows 10, Windows Server, and other versions of the Microsoft Windows to computers over the network. Then we have the Windows Server Update Services, the WSUS. It also enables information technology administrators to deploy the latest Microsoft product updates. So you can use the WSUS to fully manage the distribution of updates that are released through Microsoft Update to computers on your network. Okay, so those are some of the Windows Server roles. So what are role services? So role services allow you to control which role functionality is installed and enabled. So a server role, it is a set of software programs Okay, so when they are installed and properly configured, a computer performs a specific function for multiple users or other computers within a network. They describe the primary function, purpose, or use of a computer. So what are features of a server? So server features provide auxiliary or supporting functions to servers. So they have the ability to update hardware and software without a restart or reboot. And also they have advanced backup capability for frequent backup of critical data. And also they have advanced networking performance. And they have automatic invisible to the user, automatic data transfer between devices, and high security for resources, data, and memory protection. So it's simple, really. A role is something that the servers offers to someone else, like clients, such as on log on in IP addresses, which is the DHCP, and name resolution for DNS, etc. So a feature is something the server consumes or uses itself. For example, for network load balancing or in telnet client. So the overview of a server manager. So the server managers allows the administrators to manage the local and remote servers. So without requiring a physical access to the servers or enabling remote desktop protocol connections. So the Microsoft introduced the feature in Windows Server. So to give the administrators the ability to install, configure, and manage server roles and features. So the server manager, it is a management console in Windows Server that helps the IT professionals provision and manage both local and remote Windows-based server from the desktops. So without requiring either physical access to servers or the need to enable remote desktops protocol connections to each server. So the Active Directory, it is the server role that provides you with management and development tools that work with the industry security technologies, including encryption, certificates, and authentication. So the Active Directory helps the organization create a reliable information protection solution. So it provides a persistent data protection by enforcing data access policies. So for documents to be protected with the Active Directory, the application, the document, okay, so associated with must be RMS aware. Whereas the file server, maybe it is a dedicated system such as network attached storage device, or it may simply be a computer that hosts shared files. So for example, in a home setting, a file server may be set to automatically allow access to all computers on a local network or LAN. So a file server, it is a computer responsible for the storage and management of data files so that other computers on the same network can access the files. It enables users to share information over a network, so without having to physically transfer files. So we all know that all organizations need to share information and data between people. The print servers connect printers to client devices like desktops or laptops over a network. So the server accepts print jobs and sends them to the designated printer. So the direct IP printing is the most common alternative to print servers. So in this method, users send print jobs from their own devices straight to a printer. On your lesson 2, deploying role-specific servers. So what is a file server? What is a domain controller? What is an application server? What is a web server? And what is a remote access server? So let us define first what is a file server. So a file server provides storage for users' files, shares the folders that contain users' files. It ensures appropriate levels of access to users' files through a security settings. It provides backup and restore mechanisms. So a file server, it means that it is a computer containing files. So available to all users connected to a local area network. So in some LANs, a microcomputer is designated as the file server, while in others, it is a computer with a large disk drive and specialized software. So a file server, it is a server that provides access to files. So it acts as a central file storage location that can be accessed by multiple systems. So for example, in a home setting, a file server may be set to automatically allow access to all computers on the local network. So how file server works? So a file server, again, it is a central server in a computer network that provides file systems or at least parts of a file systems to connected clients. So it is a computer responsible for the storage and management of data files so that other computers on the same network can access the files. So what is a domain controller? So a domain controller holds a copy of ADDS. It responds to requests for Active Directory information. It authenticates users to the network and is located by querying the DNS. So when we say a domain controller, it is a server, computer that responds to security authentication requests within a computer network domain. So it is a network server that is responsible to allowing host access to domain resources. And also it authenticates users, stores user account information, and enforces a security policy for a domain. So what is the main function of a domain controller? So the main function of a domain controller, so it is part of the Microsoft network environment. So a Windows domain controller handles user authentication requests. So when a user seeks to access the network, the domain controller responds to the request. So ang domain controller is a server. So most commonly, Microsoft Active Directory. So it manages network and identity security, effectively acting as the gatekeeper for user authentication and authorization to IT resources. So within the domain. So basically, a domain controller, it is a server computer that acts like a brain for a Windows Server domain. So it stores user credentials and controls who can access the domain's resources. Okay, so what is an application server? So an application server, it is a computer that is dedicated to running network-aware application software. So it is a modern form of platform middleware. So it is a system software that resides between the operating system on one side, the external resources such as the database management system, communications and internet services on another side, and of course, the user's applications on the third side. So the applications that run on application servers are typically divided into two categories. So we have the traditional applications and web-based applications. So an application server works with a web server to handle requests for dynamic content, so such as the web applications. So a web server uses a web server plug-in to establish and maintain persistent HTTP and the HTTPS connections with an application server. So a web application, it is an application software that runs on a web server. So it is an application software. So unlike computer-based software, programs that are run locally on the operating system of the device, the web applications, it is an application software that runs on a web server. So the web applications are accessed by the user through a web browser, so with an active network connection. So these applications are programmed using a client-server model structure. So what is a web server? So a web server, it is a server computer attached to either the internet or the corporate intranet providing content. We have the static content, web-based applications, and streaming content. So a web server, it is a computer software and underlying hardware that accepts requests via HTTP, the network protocol created to distribute web pages, or its secure variant, the HTTPS. So a user agent, commonly a web browser or web crawler. So it initiates communication by making a request for a specific resource using the HTTP. And the server responds with the content of the resource or an error message. So the server can also accept and store resources sent from the user agent, so if configured. So the static content, ito yung any content that can be delivered to an end user, so without having to be generated, modified, or processed. So the server delivers the same file to each user, so making static content. So one of the simplest and most efficient content types to transmit over the internet. So the static content, it is any file that is stored in a server and is the same every time it is delivered to users. So like HTML files and images are examples of the static content. Whereas the web-based application, it is any program that is accessed over a network connection using the HTTP. So rather than existing within a device memory, the web-based applications run inside a web browser. So also known as web apps. So web applications are websites with functionality and interactive elements like Gmail, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc. are all web apps that are dynamic and built for user engagement. Whereas the streaming content, of course, it is an audio or video file on the internet that's played as the file is being downloaded. So more specifically, live streaming is the method of constantly sending and receiving content over the internet. So how does streaming content work? So just like other data that's sent over the internet, audio and video data is broken down into data packets. So each packet contains a small piece of the file, and an audio or video player in the browser on the client device takes the flow of data packets and interprets them as video or audio. Okay, so what is a remote access server? So remote access is access to corporate resources from outside the corporate network. So the remote access is the ability for an authorized person to access a computer or a network from a geographical distance through a network connection. So like VPN technology, so as a way to enable remote users and branch offices to securely log into corporate applications and other resources. So the remote computer access, okay, again, is the ability to access another computer or network that isn't not in your physical presence. So remote computer access allows an employee to access a computer desktop and its files from a remote location. So this helps enable an employee who is working from home to work effectively. So what is a DHCP service? So DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. So it reduces the complexity and amount of administrative work by using automatic TCP/IP configuration. So the DHCP, it is a network management protocol used to automate the process of configuring devices on IP networks, allowing them to use network devices or services such as the DNS and any communication protocol based on the TCP. So in DHCP, we have manual and automatic TCP/IP configuration. So in manual, the IP addresses are entered manually. The IP address could be entered incorrectly. Communication and network issues can result, and frequent computer moves increase administrative effort. Whereas in automatic TCP/IP configuration, the IP addresses are supplied automatically. Correct configuration information is ensured. Client configuration is updated automatically. A common source of network problems is eliminated. So in a DHCP server, it is a network server that automatically provides and assigns IP addresses, default gateways, and other network parameters to client devices. So it relies on the standard protocol known as the DHCP or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol to respond to broadcast queries by the client. So how DHCP allocates IP addresses? So the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, it is a network protocol that enables a server to automatically assign an IP address to a computer. So from a defined range of numbers configured for a given network. So the DHCP assigns an IP address when a system is started. So a user turns on a computer with a DHCP client. So the client computer sends a broadcast request called Discover or DHCP Discover. So looking for a DHCP server to answer. So the router directs the Discover packet to the correct DHCP server. So the server receives the Discover packet based on availability and usage policy set on the server. So the server determines an appropriate address, if any, to give to the client. So the server then temporarily reserves the address for the client and sends back to the client an offer or DHCP offer packet. So with that address information. So the server also configures the client's DNS server, the WIN server, or sometimes other services as well. So the client sends a request or DHCP request packet. So letting the server know that it intends to use the address. So the server sends an ACK or acknowledgement or DHCP ACK packet. So confirming that the client has been given a list on the address for a server specified period of time. So when a computer uses a static IP address, it means that the computer is manually configured to use a specific IP address. So one problem with static assignment, which can result from user error or inattention to detail, so occurs when two computers are configured with the same IP address. So this creates a conflict that results in loss of service. So using a DHCP to dynamically assign IP addresses, it minimizes the conflicts. So how DHCP list generation works. So the DHCP client broadcasts a DHCP discover packet. So the DHCP servers broadcast a DHCP offer packet. The DHCP client broadcasts a DHCP request packet. The DHCP server broadcasts a DHCP ACK packet. So most devices use a DHCP, so which assigns dynamic IP addresses as a default. So, but sometimes you want devices to always have the same IP address. So for example, a wireless printer, when you print something, your computer and printer locate each other using the IP addresses. So DHCP stands for a dynamic host configuration protocol and is a network protocol used on IP networks where a DHCP server automatically assigns an IP address and other information to each host on the network so that they can communicate efficiently with other endpoints. So the DHCP works by leasing IP addresses and IP information to network clients for a period of time. So for the lease to happen, the following negotiation process occurs. The discover packet contains the client's computer name and media access control address, so the DHCP servers can respond to it. So DHCP server automatically sends the required network parameters for clients to properly communicate on the network. So the DHCP servers usually assign each client with a unique dynamic IP address, which changes when the client's list for that IP address has expired. So how DHCP list renewal works. So the DHCP client sends a DHCP request packet. The DHCP server 1 sends a DHCP ACK packet. So to attempt a list renewal, the DHCP client sends a DHCP request packet directly to the DHCP server from which the client obtained the list. If the DHCP server is available, it renews the list and sends the client a DHCP ACK packet. So with the new list duration and any updated configuration parameters. So when the list needs to be renewed, the computer contacts the DHCP server that provided the list. So if the server is available, the lease is renewed and a new lease period is granted. So if this happens, you will need to release and then renew the DHCP lease. The domain name system role. So the DNS, or the domain name system, it is a hierarchical distributed database. So the DNS is the foundation of the internet naming scheme. The DNS supports accessing resources by using alphanumeric names. So the DNS was created to support the internet's growing number of hosts. So the domain name system, it enables users to access websites so without having to know the associated IP address. So the DNS servers distributed throughout the world convert domain names into IP addresses. So it is a hierarchical and decentralized naming system for computers, services, or other resources connected to the internet or private network. So it associates various information with domain names assigned to each of the participating entities. So it translates more readily memorized domain names to the numerical IP addresses needed for locating and identifying computer services and devices with the underlying network protocols. The overview of the DNS namespace. So the DNS namespace for the internet is organized hierarchically. So as shown in the given figure, it consists of the root domain directory represented as that. And the two top level domain hierarchies are one organizational and one geographical. So the DNS is the name service provided by the internet for the TCP/IP networks. So the DNS is broken up into domains, a logical organization of computers that exists in a larger network. So the DNS namespace identifies the structure of the domains that combine to form a complete domain name. The root of the DNS namespace branches out to a relatively small number of top-level domains such as .net, .com, .org, or .edu, etc. The private companies can register a domain name in one of the top-level domains and then subdivide the branch of the DNS namespace as they desire. So for example, a company named CarPoint Traders might register the domain name carpoint.com and then create 3 new subdomains under name sales.carpoint.com, support.carpoint.com, and HQ carpoint.com. So specific servers and router interfaces exposed to the internet might then be given specific DNS addresses to uniquely identify them in the DNS namespace. So an address in the DNS namespace called a fully qualified domain name, which is the FUDN, maps to a unique node on the internet. Okay, so thank you for listening. Have a nice day to all of you. So I'm Din Jane.